Tell us about yourself as an overall background.
I was born in Kaifeng, a small historic city in China. I have a bachelor degree in English literature and linguistics and an MA degree in TESOL. I have two little girls, and now I'm living in Zhengzhou, China.
Could you tell our viewers how you met Mr. Humbke? Also, your first impression and your relationship with Mr. Humbke, please.
I first met Mr. Humbke in the year 2005 in a Sino-Canadian high school program in China. He was a geography teacher at the time, and I was his co-teacher. If there's one word to describe my first impression of Mr. Humbke, that will be professional. He was always patient, sensitive to students' needs and problems. He was also a very good communicator because he kind of had the magic to get things done either inside or outside the classroom.
It is noted here that Mr. Humbke was your direct supervisor. How would you best describe his strengths and weaknesses as a principal and as a classroom teacher?
Speaking of his strengths, as I mentioned, he was a professional teacher and an administrator, and the word professional actually implies a lot of good qualities like integrity, patience, flexibility, persistence, and so on. About Mr. Humpke's weakness, I would say most of his Chinese colleagues' first impression of him might be uneasygoing or sometimes even stubborn, because he was not someone who could easily compromise when it comes to the problem of teaching and learning. Working in an international program was never easy for both Chinese and Canadian teachers. Two totally different education systems may have totally different teaching philosophy and methods. So there were conflicts caused by cultural difference going on in the program every day and everywhere, which required a lot of time and energy for teachers from both sides to explain things to each other. So for most people, they would probably just give up, to save time, to avoid conflicts. But it's much easier to be a follower sometimes, right? But Mr. Humpke never gave up. He tried everything he could to convince the Chinese administrators and teachers to manage the program or the students in a more Canadian way. Because I understand his philosophy, he always believed that students in the program were going to Canadian universities, so the earlier they get used to a Canadian way of learning and teaching, the better, which was right, actually. And eventually he did make the program more Canadian in China, which I think was quite an achievement. So in some sense, his stubbornness might be good.
How did the Chinese learners benefit from Mr. Humbke?
There were a lot of things that students benefited from Mr. Humpke, and here I just want to mention one thing. He kind of created a whole new world of English learning for the Chinese students he ever taught. Here's the background how Chinese students learn English in China. They basically learn English in a silent way because English is still a foreign language rather than a second language in China, so they're not required to use English on a daily basis. So English is more of a subject for them to study, to analyze, to pass exams, instead of a tool for real life communication. So Roger realized this problem and he decided to change the situation because all these students were going to English universities in the future, so they have to master the actual language skills, like reading, speaking, all these skills, instead of just the knowledge of English. So the first thing he did was to set up an English library and a reading club, and he became the first librarian himself. He engaged the students in reading English novels by teaching them how to start a novel and collecting book reports through emails regularly. Before him, there was no English reading habits in the classroom, but after that, some students can even read like 13 English novels a year, which was amazing. And he also As a principal, he also asked other foreign teachers to set up various English clubs like a football club, basketball club, drama club, movie club, and so on. All these activities, including the reading club, speeded up students' adaptation to a total English learning environment. And after participation, students were more willing to use English to solve problems at school.
How would you best describe Mr. Humbke's relationship with the Chinese community?
About Mr. Humbke's relationship with the Chinese community, I guess after years of teaching and living in China, he knows very well about how to get along with Chinese people. He was Canadian before, but now he's more international. And as I said, it seems to me that he is quite a sensitive person. While he was in China, he could always notice the subtle differences between Chinese people and himself easily when there is any problem and handle them carefully. So I seldom saw big conflicts between himself and Chinese people. And he also married a Chinese wife, and they're having a happy marriage. So yes, he has a very good relationship with the Chinese community.
How was Mr. Humbke's approach to Chinese students, staff, and parents different from other educational administrators you have worked with?
About Mr. Humbke's approach, actually his approach is quite new to Chinese students, parents, and teachers, and administrators. And in fact, his approach is a kind of reflection of the different expectations for kids in the two societies.
What are some memorable moments with Mr. Humbke you would like to share with us?
What's special about Mr. Humbke's method is that he did not just import the Canadian way to the program, but he spent a lot of time changing students' mindset and attitude in the first place. And this is based on his understanding of Chinese students' characteristics, like they are always shy to speak English, they may feel real awkward when making any mistakes. So every time when he met new students, he would definitely tell them three things. And I can still remember on the first day of every school year, he always put the three sentences on the blackboard. And the first one is, put your face into your pocket. And the second one is, tell yourself, I love making mistakes. And the last one is, ask questions. Actually, they're very effective ice-breaking sentences. I'm still using them with my students as well.